A very good day to all of you. My name is Markus Martenstein. I'm working at Envolker IT Consulting, a company that develops solutions for digital procurement and helps organizations with advisory services to optimize the processes before implementing new technologies. It is my pleasure today to welcome you all to this exciting webinar with the topic of sourcing and procurement in the spotlight. As I already said, we have nearly 70 participants today, which proves that the topic is currently really a topic that all of the organizations in the mid-markets are finding challenges. In the last years of COVID, all of us have found difficulties in doing normal business, and we all have been trying to identify what will help us to improve the situation. So I'm very curious to hear during the panel discussion individual experience of all of you and possible learnings out of the different perspectives. If any of the participants has some questions during the sessions today, please feel free to enter those in the chat, and we will try to get our people to answer that as good as possible. But let me introduce first Wolfgang Lehmacher today, who will be moderating this webinar. A few words to Wolfgang for those who don't know him yet. So Wolfgang, you have held many positions as a board member, consultant, business angel, and executive advisor, but your passion is supply chain and transport. You have been driving force behind the expansion of La Poste and the topic, and you have worked at P&T as a country manager in Switzerland, and for a long time you have been the director of the World Economic Forum, just to mention a few of the important stages of your career. During your career, you have been living in many countries. Currently, you are in Hong Kong. You have built a very large network over the last year. So there are a couple of friends that you invited today for this discussion, and I would like to hand over to you now, Wolfgang, to introduce them to our audience.
Thank you very much, Markus, and thanks for joining this important webinar. Why is it important? Because the procurement function has never been as important as in the last 18 months, and maybe even a bit longer when we remind ourselves the China-US trade tensions and the results, which were in fact some challenges to get stuff procured. Indeed, we have invited some people who help us to put the sourcing and procurement activity into the spotlight. And I would like to know from them, so what are their priorities? What are the challenges they are facing, and also how they see the future of procurement and sourcing. We have invited, in addition to Markus, who also will give his comments, and we have invited 3 panelists. First, I would like to introduce Ahmad Al-Mullah, member of the IDC Advisory Council Digital Transformation. He is an advisor and board member also of CIO Majlis. Second is Alessio Garofalo, CIO, CTO of NEOM Industrial City. And it's my great pleasure to welcome him here, because NEOM is a bottom-up built city which I think has to procure and source a lot of things. Then we have Johannes Schätzel, supply chain planning overseas of BMW, and I don't need to talk a lot about BMW. And it's obvious that the automotive sector currently is facing some challenges. I only mention the semiconductor shortage. So I would like to kick off the discussion by getting a 360 panorama view of what the panelists think is currently the situation in sourcing and procurement, and how we can overcome the challenges, which you also please share with us. So I would like to start with Ahmad to get your view. You're coming from supply chain, but you have also a rich background in IT. So what's your take on the current situation, and where do you see the situation going?
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for the nice introduction. I think the question is a very simple question, but the answer is not as simple. So let's try and look at where we are today. I think the experience we had with the pandemic has really raised a lot of lights over the procurement function. Procurement is one of the areas where really, technology has not really been used to the extent really possible. If I compare it to, for example, the financial sector or the let's say manufacturing and so on. The first thing I think that now people are realizing that we really need to somehow transform. We need to look at different aspects of the procurement. First of all, I think we need to move away from looking at procurement as a function to procurement as a process. And when I mean a process, I'm not talking about just the internal process, but the process that also links with all other stakeholders, being suppliers, regulators, customers, whatever. So that you can really get visibility across the supply chain. This has become a necessity because of the risk that has been, witnessed nowadays. This is one of the main things, and I'm trying to be an abstract here, not really go into details, but I think later on, I think my colleagues can cover even more. The second thing, I think it's being realized, and I put in very simple terms, it's quite often, it's very important to put effectiveness before efficiency. You need to be effective, then become efficient, right? And that is quite important. I want to add something here that I think we are seeing a big change is trying to look at the value procurement provides rather than looking at just the cost of reduction side. Looking at the full value, how can you really optimize your procurement to deliver the best value, considering the price, the cost, the quality, whatever, right? Everything else. So that is one thing. The second thing that we are seeing a big trend as well is integrated planning, especially in manufacturing. Integrated planning has been always a topic, but it never really received the importance it needs to. The one key thing that also has come up is strategic sourcing. Many companies now realize that, I really could have done a lot more in strategic sourcing, which would have helped the organization looking at risk. Risk itself, I think risk modeling is something that has also evolved. If you remember, I mean, most of the risk models look at two dimensions. They look at the probability of something happening and the impact. But what has been missed out is sometimes the duration of that item being there. One major aspect, and I think I will then conclude I have two more points, if you allow me. One major aspect is utilizing what technology has to offer. I think technology is underutilized when it comes to the overall procurement function. And perhaps my colleague will talk about that later on. The last point, and I make this as a question, is agility. Agility, if I ask any of procurement directors or CPOs, how agile is your organization today in terms of dealing with demand, dealing with risk, scaling up, scaling down, how agile it is? And I haven't seen really in any organization really agility being measured as a KPI. And I think this is where we'll probably come to saying KPIs need to be redefined. So I summarize it in that, and I think I'll go back to you. So maybe you can take other people's input as well.
Yeah, Ahmad, thanks a lot. A long list of things to do. I just would like to know a little bit more. You said that some wish to have done a little bit more in light of the pandemic.
Yes.
Can you elaborate on this? What that little bit more may have been?
Sure. So I refer mainly basically to strategic sourcing. So many people have gone across trying to get the best deal, and the best price from the cost perspective, but they ended up with issues. Maybe they didn't look at really diversifying in terms of geographical locations. They didn't look at the best value they get, and so on. So this is one of the key things. And I think one important thing here is they did not even involve the suppliers in terms of collaboration and so on. At difficult times, the strategic sourcing really proves to be beneficial. In summary, I think most organizations opted for short-term procurement goals rather than really long-term goals. And that's where strategic sourcing comes into place.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
If I also want to mention something here, and I exactly see it the way as Ahmad said it, important for global sourcing really will be to get the balance, the trade-off between global sourcing, local sourcing, having a resilient supply chain, having economies of scale, and that comes close to what Ahmad says, that companies focusing in the future only on economies of scale but neglecting a resilient and a stable supply chain won't succeed, because that's what we have seen from the pandemic, that will be a difficult trade-off then in the future.
Yes, thank you, Anas.
Thanks, Johannes. And Ahmad also mentioned integrated planning, and you are dealing with planning at BMW. So what are your challenges currently, and what do you think about integrated planning?
Yeah, probably also everybody knows it. Currently, we are facing the huge transformation of the automotive industry in terms of electromobility. So that affects the supply chain in so many ways, so many aspects that also a lot of people didn't think about it before. For example, let's say the battery cells. There are so many requests, so many needs to handle these battery cells in transport, warehousing, and also the supply chain is completely different. The suppliers that haven't been there like a few years ago. So we have to treat the electro components very differently to before. Also, what is really challenging us is the supplier network itself. Small suppliers are not able to handle the challenges as they did it in the past. So we see a consolidation of suppliers now. A few weeks ago, the German automotive supplier Heller, for example, was bought by the French company Forcia. So also the dimensions and the powers of the market now are changing as the suppliers are adapting to the new situation. And but we also have some opportunities here. So it's not like the digitalization is, or let's say the transformation is a threat to us, but we also can develop new business models. We at BMW, we have a method now to get connected directly to the customer for the after sales. So the customer can get in touch with the dealer via app and already order the parts that he needs then at the dealership. So we are much faster, and the customer can back to the road. So that's what we are facing now in terms of digitalization, and also threats for the future, and also the challenges for the future.
Yeah, digitization is a big word, and digital transformation. And I'm happy that we have Alessio with us, who is the CIO CTO at NEOM Industrial City. And I would like to have your take on technology. So how is technology helping in the new world of procurement and sourcing, or not? So Alessio, your take, your view on the current situation.
I think at this moment in times, and I wanted to connect to what Johannes and Ahmad said, technology have a lot to catch up, right, in the procurement industry. And I think it needs to start from looking at the business holistically, okay, and not just looking at the procurement as a functions itself. Okay? And I want to give an example. We have now products out there that they are looking at analyzing your cost into the procurement journey and help you to make some decisions from a strategic point of view. However, they may only look at the cost, efficiency, as Ahmed was saying before, and help you to find the best possible results on that. Okay, but maybe if you look at not just the procurement journey, but then a utilizations journey, and what comes out from a business, you will see that the total cost of ownership of your decision, okay, actually then it was completely wrong, right? It was costing you more, in maintenance, in the quality of the services that you received, and so on. So I think that from a technology point of view, it's get out of the shell of using procurement as a silos functions, and instead integrating most of the procurement capabilities to look at data and take data across all the organizations. So spatiate across all the organizations, I think, is the first serious, and most important things for the technology in the procurement space. And then connected to all the crisis situations that we've seen in this last 18 months, you need to be sure that your systems and your technology, they don't just look inwards, but they look outwards, right? They look at what is outside there. They capture the variables, they capture the data of what is outside of your company. And this can be like a huge amount of different data, right? It can be simply like the trading industry. It can be like the weather, okay, for the transport industry. No, it can contain a lot of different components. But trying to simplify as much as possible, at least how I think procurement should move forward without moving yet to emerging technology and all these kind of things that maybe we will explore later. Okay, get the simple things right that are not simple at all, but they will really make you as a differentiated entities on your panorama.
Thanks a lot, Alessio. Yeah, if we are at technology and IT and software, it's time to ask Marcus whether you have seen at Rheinbrück in the consulting area shifts. Do people think today differently about digital tools, digital transformation than before the pandemic?
I think, yes, that's a good question, Wolfgang. So obviously there are the trends to get best price, right? But I think that due to the experience that they have made now, finding the challenges with the Suez Canal, with the COVID situation, to be able to react and be more proactive or predictive, right? Instead of just having the data that you know about your business and the forecast that you have, but also try to get more and more into the possibility to work predictively, right? Gives the e-sourcing a much higher importance and relevance for the organizations, understanding that the whole process is dependent on not only on the current data, but also on possible impact, as Alessio was saying, It could be weather, it could be transport challenges, supply chains interruptions, and so on, right?
Thank you, Marcus. Ahmad, how do you see the world changing? You indicated that not enough is done. I would be interested in what is done currently in your field in respect to e-sourcing and the use of new tools.
Yes, so I think, let me first say something here. If BMW is having challenges, I think BMW is one of the companies that I give high regards when it comes to supply chain. They have, they have invested quite a lot, and they have, great visibilities over what is happening. Now companies, we have seen many companies going, utilizing technology, but one thing that was not talked about that has been a challenge was always data. Data has been always a big challenge for organizations. But we are seeing that companies are now trying to drive their strategy, using insights, using, tools, which gives them visibility and define how to move forward in terms of strategy. And instead of what used to happen either through intuitive or, instinct or past experience, now there is more utilization of analytics and data and systems to define, to come with those. KPIs, I think KPIs is a huge topic. KPIs and procurement had always been very, very simple, always been focused on how much cost reduction, how much, I have improved my internal processes in terms of conversion from requisition to order or whatever, right? Inventory turnover and so on. Now KPI is going to more details because of technology into really trying to look at trends. You mentioned something about e-sourcing. E-sourcing and even, let me also say e-sourcing and even e-tendering and all these has become quite a norm for many companies. And they have seen now that they can utilize this in a big way. It saves a lot of money, a lot of time, and it becomes quite, it's becoming really like a norm now. Even e-auction or reverse auctions that companies are using technology. We have seen a lot of trends in that line. One thing I mentioned earlier that I think people are looking at again is really trying to see how I'm bringing value. Again, long-term value, not short-term value. I think somebody mentioned about how do I have, when I make contracts, I make a relationship, I look at sustainability rather than just I look at one deal. So these kind of things we have seen. It all falls into a bigger umbrella of a digital transformation, but being a digital transformation advisor, I really don't want to talk about digital transformation because it's a huge topic, right? So, but all falls under that. And I think in short, I can really see that companies are now tapping into what technologies can offer, whether it's e-sourcing, e-tendering, whatever, right? They really are looking at that in a greater, and of course, it's all being driven by the COVID and what has been happening.
Thank you. It's good news.
Wolfgang, if you don't mind, I would like to pick up what Ahmad said here when it comes to data and technology. What we see in our daily experience, it is really important to enable the people to use the data correctly and to get used to data analysis, data science, not to be an expert only, let's say, in procurement or the expert in supply chain management, but also developing the skills to use the data in their daily job. Otherwise, it takes too long. We are facing a reduced life cycle of our products. We are facing faster and faster decisions. We are facing more and more evaluations about the right decisions. And it makes it easier if the people who are taking these decisions also can evaluate and analyze the data. So it's not just about investing in the technology, but also investing in the people. That's what we see in our daily business, and that's also what makes us successful here.
Markus, do you want to add from your perspective, because you're dealing with this people question, I can imagine, regularly, because you're introducing new systems. How do you see the topic of people?
Yeah, I think it is really one of the key factors is the acceptance of the people, right, of the technology. So you have often, I mean, Johannes, I don't know if you were in principle also trying to say that we have the possibility to use best of breeds and instead of possible one solution that will only give you a high level overview. I would like to challenge you in that way to say, you know, that there are often also acceptance problems if you are using too many systems, diversity of systems and data that are possibly also work in silos, right? Instead of having a common platform. So one of the key topics on top of the acceptance and ease of use is also the possibility to use the tools in the sense of collaboration, right? So to have the possibility to talk to your suppliers on this platform, to change information on the platform and integrate them and being really a part of your organization, because you want to have them on the long run as your business partner and build them up as a strategic partner for your organization. I think that is the journey that I see more and more coming, that it is important to integrate the suppliers more with this collaboration tool, but also, as I said, giving the internal people the ease of use. Like today, I mean, we are all using Amazon, right? So ideally, we would be able to log into our systems in the morning, access to the information that we get, that we need to make our decisions, right? And this is also how we developed our solution Merlin, that we, in principle, are giving each of the stakeholders in the morning the possibility to access to their data and to take decisions based on the data that they found that are individually required for them, and also collaborate with internal people, with the suppliers on these platforms, so that all the information is in there, right?
Okay. Alessio, as the CIO, CTO, what's your take on the link between data and people? Everybody should have his individual or her individual data. Is your experience, and as you have worked for Amazon, maybe you can also take a position from that point of view?
Sure. I think that, yeah, connecting to exactly what Markus was saying, you know, you want to make the procurement experience as easy as shopping on Amazon, right? Okay. So, and it will be amazing, right? If then you have inside, behind those logic, the same logic that maybe Amazon has to make the experience as good as it is, but for managing your thresholds, you know, managing your catalog and so on. The reality is that, you know, when you're looking at the Amazon example itself, you know, the catalog of Amazon is so strong because there is 1 million of catalog in it, right? Okay. So I think when you're looking from a technology point of view, being strong, it means not being alone for the futures, and this means the same both from a business point of view and from a data and a technology point of view. Being open to share catalog, okay, being open to share the results of your procurement, of course, without sharing all the confidential informations, the financials, right, the vendors or the customers' informations that needs to be protected in a different way, and we can discuss about that. You know, being able to share those resources that can be shared, okay, is really the strength of the future. Okay? And I think there are some interesting trends that we can see in the procurement industry, just at the edge, okay, of coming out. A lot of people probably heard about the decentralized finance, you know, a spin-off of blockchains and so on. Okay, but it's coming out in notions, you know, the decentralized procurement, right, component. So having independent entities, okay, that they can basically procure through a shared catalog methods and then distribute resources where is actually needed. Okay, introducing more flexibility into the chain. It's true that we are really at the beginning of seeing these realities coming to, but it is definitely the future. Okay, more sharing attitude on all these different layers.
Yeah, thank you, Alessio. And there are two questions, in fact, from the audience, which are related to that, at least somehow. So the first one is, how should we be weighing the cost and deploying technologies like AI and blockchain, which you mentioned, against the benefits those tools bring? And then you mentioned also confidentiality, which is very, very closely linked to security, data security. So what about this aspect when implementing digital solutions?
So they're both extremely complicated topics, right? That probably will take days to discuss in depth. But you know, I want to try to simplify them as much as you can, so that everybody can actually then take an action, simple actions, you know, towards something that makes sense. So when we're looking at the AI and blockchains, they're two completely different things, and they need to be looked at into a complete different way. Okay, AI, you know, is really human automations, you know, behind transformations of all these informations and data that you have to replicate human behavior, right? Okay, so if you want to look and calculate how much is the impact on your cost of deploying something like that, you really need to look at your OpEx, right? Okay. You need to look at your operating expenditures and understand, you know, how much of this actually am I automating, okay? And looking at your OpEx, then you can assume that the introductions of the automations will simplify your costs, you know, will reduce your cost between 20 and 40%. Okay, it's a ballpark number, right? It's not like it will not be valid across everything and so on, but to give you a ballpark numbers, you know, you can assume that you will save 30% of your OpEx if you automate, you know, those kind of operations. Okay, that is just, you know, to do a quick estimations on the AI component. The blockchain component is all another story. Okay, because the blockchain component instead it target other elements, so more the security, the traceability, you know, the transparency of the information that you have into your chain. Okay. So a way how I would approach to understand if it makes sense, okay, to implement the blockchain, you know, in your chain, is to estimate what is the cost of not having that visibility or the traceability or the transparency of those informations. So, you know, how much of information you're losing, how much time you're actually losing because you don't have visibility of that kind of information. So that is what probably blockchain can introduce you in a simple way. And I think lastly, looking at instead the discussions of the data security and privacy, I would say this is like a 3-step journey. Okay? And the step number 1 is the identifications of the data that are coming in. Okay? You need to label them. You need to understand which is the sensible data and which is not, right? Connected to what we were discussing before, you know, what I can share and what I cannot. Okay? So identify which is the data that is really sensible, like your financial informations, no vendors, accounts, no tax informations, and so on. Okay? Then you need to understand your ERP landscape, and this means working with your IT department, right? You need to understand, how those informations that are very sensible are actually handled by your ERP, and your technology staff, okay, working with IT, and do the mapping and understand if there is some gap, okay, with where this data is located or is managed. And the last one, the last piece is actually then, if you have those gaps, or also if you don't, okay, how you ensure that you have the right security standard, the data encryptions, and so on with your organizations to ensure that you cover your privacy and data security in the proper way. Okay, again, very simplistic way maybe to see that, but I think it's like a good guidance of where to start from.
Yeah, Alessio, thank you very much. That was a complex question and required a little bit also a longer answer. I heard during the discussion that BMW is pretty advanced in their digitization and their supply chain. Johannes, where does data kicks in your world, and does it help you, for example, to make faster decisions?
Yeah, Wolfgang, exactly. So I mentioned it briefly before. We are facing reduced product life cycles. New car models are on the market earlier than before. So in the past, we had about 7 years of running a model. Now we come down to 6 years or maybe 5 years. So these reduced life cycles also make it necessary to always challenge and to always evaluate our supply chain and our procurement network new. So in the early phase of a new product, we are, especially also in logistics, permanently doing evaluations. Where should we source the components from? Which transport mode are we using? Which components come from that region in the world? Which component should we source from another region? And these questions need permanent evaluation also, and of course, based on data. In the past, like let's say 5, 6, 7 years ago, it was not that easy. I mean, we had our systems, we had our Excel reports, we had the SAP system, we were able to pull the reports out of the system. But that was just too slow. So we are developing, and we already have developed our system towards a kind of, we call it data lake. A huge data lake, including all the data that we need to evaluate new products, new vehicle projects. For example, the question comes out of procurement, supply chain planning. We are sourcing a significant portion of the next project, of the next vehicle from Europe and not from the NAFTA region. So can you give us the answer, or what do you think? How much does it cost? Can you give us the answer next week? So we need the data. We need to pull the data out of the data lake, do our evaluation, and give an answer. And the more and more questions like that come up, because the product life cycle is reduced, and that's why we need the data, and that's why we need the technology to answer this question in the past. So not only the electromobility is challenging us, but also the product life cycles and the increased evaluation cycles.
Yeah, what I get here is that the supply chains as they are built today would not be manageable with the old tools or without data and technology. That's something. I heard from
we can handle it like it was in the past, but we need to make decisions based on data, and we would be too slow if we would continue like we did it in the past. That's the difference.
And Alessio mentioned the holistic approach. How much are your suppliers integrated in the BMW world? Is there a lot of integration? Do they use also the corresponding systems? How is it at that point?
Yeah, maybe let me mention a new development, a new project that we had like 1 or 2 years ago, and the BMW purchasing department even won a digitalization prize for it. So it's a capacity tool to match exactly the available capacity at the suppliers and the needed capacity in the future for BMW. So on a real-time basis, suppliers can always match their capacities with our need in the past. So if our demand in, like, let's say 6 to 10 months exceeds the capacity of suppliers, they immediately see it and they immediately can take the actions. So that's the real-time connection and the permanent link that we have to our suppliers, for example.
Thank you, Johannes. Ahmad, you are advising and you're sharing your knowledge and your vast experience. There is a question from the audience about the must-have technologies in procurement for mid-sized manufacturing businesses. Could you call out a few of those must-have technologies?
Thank you very much. So I come from manufacturing, but large manufacturing. I think that's a very good question. Manufacturing is a bit tricky. It's a little bit, I'm sure they are facing a lot of challenges, especially when you are in manufacturing. Usually you deal with a large number of suppliers and a lot of OEMs and so on. So it becomes a bit of a challenge. Now, assuming the first thing, I assume that you must have your back office ERP system in place. I'm assuming that is there. And in that, I think you really must have standard processes. Really don't want to go and customize things. So I'm assuming that is there. So building on top of this, I think there is a lot of good news, especially for the small to mid-size companies. The first thing is, I think you must have visibility across your expenditures, because inventory management within manufacturing is very, very important. You have a lot of spare parts. You don't, if you really don't manage them well, you end up with basically, disposing them. Now, technologies, emerging technologies such as, IoT and so on, can be quite helpful. How it becomes helpful today, for example, a lot of companies are going away from preventive maintenance to predictive maintenance. There are IoT devices that help you estimate when do you need to do the maintenance. And hence, if you really try to get a list of bill of materials, you can actually plan your spare parts and procurement much more efficiently. The second thing that I think is very important, maybe I mentioned this several times, in manufacturing, integrated planning is a must. If you don't have integrated planning, basically I'm saying integrate your production scheduling that you do in your manufacturing part with your demand planning and under your procurement and so on. This is a must that you have. So you need to really become demand driven. The other part that I will add is really supplier management. You need to have a long-term supplier management manufacturing. Sometimes it could be a belt that stops the whole production. So you really need to make sure you have quite you have good software that helps in collaboration and so on. So these are the three things that I will say in terms of trends, in terms of technologies. Yes, there is BI that is coming up big time. Everybody talks about Industry 4.0. To be honest, Industry 4.0 promises a lot of things. There are very small initiatives in that. If you can really look at what applies to you, you can probably use those. And it really proves to be a lot cost savings. You can achieve a lot if you really try to select the right ones. But the top one, I would say, really having visibility across your whole expenditure and your whole supply chain. That will be the must-have on top of your ERP.
Thanks, Ahmad. And the next question, in fact, builds on this. The question is about what is the better approach to procurement digitization? An end-to-end source-to-pay automation or a more modular approach based on the best of breed or multiple best of breed solutions? And Ahmad,
Yes.
you seem to have a good answer, and I would also like to have Marcus commenting on that. But Ahmad,
Yes.
please, short.
So I think, I go, it depends. All of them, both of them come with advantages and disadvantages. If you go for best of breed, you probably are doing, best processes or best in every aspect, but you really need to manage the integration, you need to manage technology, you need to manage a lot more things. It depends on your size, what you want to do, and how ready you are to do this. Skill sets and really proving, it proves to be expensive, the best of breed, but if you really can utilize it right and get it, I think you will go for best of breed. But my recommendation is not to go for best of breed. I think it's much easier to manage. It's probably gives you 80% of what best of breed will give you, and it's be easier to manage. But that doesn't mean the other one is not good. Just the other one needs to be really more managed. This is my view. I think Marcos probably disagree with me, but I think let's hear Marcos as well.
Marcos.
Thank you very much. No, I'm not disagreeing with you. I mean, there is no 100% wrong or right in this, as you are saying, right? So, but there are a couple of hints that I can possibly share from my point of view that any company that would like to use technology in the procurement needs to balance the different factors. Let me give you some examples. For example, any buyer would like to have a lot of features and functionalities, but is this the right approach for your organization? Often the experience is that those solutions are too heavy or too complex to implement. So possibly a best of breed approach might be the right thing here, but not the more is better, right? So you need to understand, first of all, what your organization really needs to improve the business. And then also everyone needs to balance the value of integration suite against the need of special functionality. So it is not always said that an end-to-end solution might be the best suit, but I think for the ease of use, the possibility to maintain and cost point of view, it is for most of the mid-market organization better to have an integrated system that you can use from end to end, considering your process, than to have too many tools that you need to take into consideration also on the long run to scale up, to upgrade, to get all the people onboarded and educated. So I think those are the elements that you need to take into consideration. Time to value, integrated versus best of breed. Does it fit your industry is also a very good point. And last but not least, as I said, also the ease of use and therefore the acceptance of the whole organization to use the tool.
Thank you very much, Marcus. There's another question about the areas which see currently the biggest investments. We talked a lot now about what we think should happen, but who has a view on what is currently really happening and where does the money go when it comes to procurement and sourcing technology? So where are the people investing?
I mean, from my point of view, I'm also kind of observing the German startup market and the German market of software suppliers and also the suppliers in the automotive industry. So what is a big business at the moment and what also enables for the future is the real-time tracking and the real-time visibility of goods, of shipments to the suppliers and to the OEMs. Because if you have the traceability and always the overview where your parts are, you can enable all your processes on it, starting from warehousing, production, and also shipping to the suppliers. So from my point of view in supply chain management, really the real-time visibility of the goods, that's currently a big deal.
Thank you, Johannes. Another view?
I'll add on top of this, there are two areas that I think there is a lot of investments happening. One is in robotic process automation. I think that is being considered a lot within especially in the manufacturing side. At least what I have come across. I'm talking mainly in the region here, but I probably assume globally is there. One thing that is being also looked at, it's not surprising, it's risk management. How do you look at risk management from a procurement and supply chain perspective? There is a lot of this is really usually driven by the board rather than even just by the procurement team, looking at how do I really manage the risks and so on. These two things are quite common. Adding to that is I think the strategic sourcing and e-sourcing is being considered quite a lot. That's what I have seen.
Thank you, Ahmad. And Alessio, you are building a city from scratch. Where do you start? So where does the first money go?
So the first money goes into defining your open architecture, your architecture itself, right? And when you're looking at technology, and you have the luxury to start from scratch, what you want to be sure is that you set up for success your organizations, considering that technology is changing on a 6-month base now, right? So what you're putting together in place now needs to be able to be open and evolve with the technology evolving at this fast pace, right? So I think it's really starting to look at your architecture and say, okay, what flexibility can I introduce? Okay? Or how flexible can I am? Can I be in defining the services that I have? Working, for example, with open architecture, microservices, hybrid clouds. I says a lot of saying a lot of nerdy word, but I mean those kind of things are important to ensure that then you can evolve through time. So that is where on my side I would always start. Okay? And also if I would look at digital transformations experience and not starting from scratch, that is luxury that not a lot of people have. I would say I would look at how can I be more open, how can I evolve with reducing effort on integrations and so on. And another elements that I would evaluate in this moment in time, overall for those medium-sized organizations, I would evaluate strongly also how can I integrate a low-code platform into my organizations, low-code or no-code platforms in my organizations. A lot of times you see that there are very small needs in the organizations, and we are not able to fix it. With any of the systems that we have, you need to create a flow for approval, for example, and it doesn't work because your ERP doesn't let you do it, and you need to have developers that they coded it out, or you don't have the right tools and you need to buy another one, but it's not integrated, it's not clustered correctly. So low-code platforms and no-code platforms maybe a resource inside your organizations that can handle that. Will allow you to introduce that flexibility continuously, okay, for those small problems that they don't seem to be a problem, however they are, and they make people stressed. Okay, so I mean, it's not just procurement related, since it's organizations related, but I think this procurement is also deeply impacted, by that need. So I will look into that.
Thank you very much, Alessio. And I take that already as a kind of recommendation to the audience, because I wanted to go for a last round of what is the one thing the audience should look at or consider, which hasn't been mentioned so far? So you brought in a new topic. Johannes, what else should the audience look at, which is of very high importance for procurement in the future?
Watch also the startup market. So kind of have broader scope. Watch the young entrepreneurs also active in the startup market for procurement. There are a lot of really interesting solutions there and people. So that's what I suggest here.
Thanks a lot, Johannes. Ahmad, what's your final advice? What people
I have two advices. The first advice is redefine your KPIs. I think it's very important to do that. The importance of supply chain, that it has come to surface over the last couple of years. So it's very important to look at relook at the KPIs. Yes, cost and all these are important. Still keep them, but really add KPIs that are more future looking and let's say it's more predictive ones. The second point that I will say, really utilize technology. Go and look for technology. I think it adds a lot of value. Of course, you must have a governance model whereby you can evaluate and make sure you have return on investment and so on in your investment. But what is very important is to really, today without technology you cannot really manage with the demand coming up.
Thank you very much, Ahmad. And this is the moment to thank you all, Ahmad, Johannes, and Alessio, for the great contribution. And I hand over to Marcus to give his final words of advice and close the session.
Thank you very much, Wolfgang. It was really a fantastic session. Thanks everybody for your contribution. I learned quite a lot, and I hope so that the audience also has their takeaway of all these good conversations and good inspirations on how to organize possibly a little bit different and come out of the tunnel using technologies, right? That drives strategic initiatives with insight and not only with instinct. So data lakes, there are a lot of interesting keywords that are part of this discussion today, and that everybody should possibly look at and see how they can integrate that into their organization. Also make sure that we are all using the right KPIs, as Ahmed said, based on challenges and if predictive indicators, so that the incidents like COVID, Suez Canal will not affect you that hard, right? And you possibly can avoid them. And adding value to the organization instead of only achieving saving. I think that is also some of the findings that we all agree today. So using an esourcing solution to manage risk, collaborate internally and externally are, I think, the trends that we are seeing, and I can hopefully summarize that with the acceptance of everybody today. So thank you everybody for this wonderful session, and I would like to say goodbye for now.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you very much. Good day.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Guys. Nice to meet you guys all, and see you. Have a good day, everybody. Thank you.
Good day.
Thank you, Ahmed. Thank you, Johannes, Alessio, Wolfgang. Bye-bye.